just to bring people up to speed to this for our newer listeners and viewers on the show and people that might not be familiar with the timeline of events, I will summarize it as quickly as possible. So, Damar Hamlin did not win Comeback Player of the Year last year. Joe Flacco did. And as a result, everyone bitched and moaned. Bettors, people who bet Damar Hamlin, not all of them, but some of them, were very loud and very upset. And as a result, the Associated Press, Rob Maddie, with like 2 A's, I don't know if I like him. Rob Maddie puts this thing out during the offseason, basically saying the AP that the spirit of the award of Comeback Player of the Year is meant to honor a player who is coming back from like illness or injury. And that's going to be the criteria moving forward. So like Joe Flacco would not have been eligible last year because Joe Flacco came back from like being old and being bad. Like Geno Smith came back from being bad a couple years ago. Like Sam Darnold, if he wins this year, would come back from being bad. And that's not what they want the spirit of the award to be. Now, as the season has gone on, we're starting to see some people who vote for the awards, most notably Mike Florio, our NBC Sports and Peacock teammate of Pro Football Talk, saying he's going to vote for Sam Darnold, despite what the Associated Press is saying. Now, I've talked to some voters who have told me off record that the AP has said, like, do not vote for Darnold, and some voters appear to, like, not care. So we don't know how this is going to play out. And the last thing here, and then I'll hand the baton to Femi, and Femi's going to give you great analysis here. On October 11th, it was a Friday, I did like a rant on this show that went like I want to say went like viral the way like, can I say this on the air? I can, right? I can say that on the air, right? What I just typed there?
I mean,
like
that's
the
almost
Hawk
like
Tua girl. Like it didn't go viral the way like she went viral, like for that. That's not what I'm saying. But like I think a lot of people in the betting space picked up on that. And what I basically said was, don't bet Sam Darnold. He can't win. And Ken Barkley and I talked about it in the summer. Like the AP is literally telling you that the criteria is only players coming back from injury and illness should be considered, and that's not Sam Darnold. So don't bet Darnold to win. But Femi, something now interesting is happening in the betting market, right? Off of Florio and others. Talk about it, please. Let's talk about Darnold's price and if you think people should be betting Sam Darnold. And I might have to take the L on this one. And the good news is, if I do need to take the L, there's still time for us to make money in this market.
There is still time. And what's happening right now in the Comeback Player of the Year market is where Joe Burrow is a prohibitive odds-on favorite, minus 800. But after that, Sam Darnold is sitting there at 8-1. And this is where the kind of tricky dance is sort of happening right now in the market, because you've seen certain bettors go ahead and take a chance on Darnold at big prices, 30-1, 20-1, even 12-1 as early as this week. But we don't even know if he's eligible to win the award. We know that everybody's eligible to win, but we don't know if voters are going to vote for him because, like Nick mentioned, they've been encouraged to look elsewhere. But like the voters keep saying that they're interested in going with Darnold. So like the tricky part for me, at least in handicapping this market, is trying to gather as much stuff as possible to see if this is maybe just a vocal minority or if there's going to be enough voters that say, you know what, that's a great story. Because I do think Sam Darnold, like all bets aside, I think it's a tremendous story. The way this guy was thrown out of the New York Jets organization, the Panthers.
Easily under the old guidelines. Easily he would win.
I think it's like the best like sort of redemption story this NFL season, which is why as bettors, like you can see people like maybe some of the voters who don't, because like I'll say it this way. A lot of voters don't think about this award until it's time to fill out the ballot, because it's not one of the high profile awards. I mean, like you just listen to all the talk shows. They're all talking about MVP. They're all talking about Coach of the Year. Like those are the more high profile awards. Nobody's doing the segment 12 minutes on Comeback Player of the Year other than our show, because we talk about the bets with Comeback Player of the Year. It's not a high profile award. So with that being the case, it might not take much for there to be kind of like a groundswell of momentum towards Sam Darnold. I mean, think about what happened last year when everybody thought it was going to be Hamlin. A couple vocal people said, you know, I think I'm going to go with Joe Flacco, and everybody got caught up in Flacco fever, and he ends up winning. Like, I think that there's a very real possibility to where Sam Darnold, if he gets 11 first place votes out of the 50, that he might win this award. Because you look around, like, who else is everybody voting for? Like, there's not a lot of guys. Joe Burrow has won this award before. I said it on Wednesday, and I still attest to this. I think if Joe Burrow wins this award, it's going to be the lamest Comeback Player of the Year award ever. Like, it's just going to be like, okay, he's won it before. Like, he's sort of like above this award. And why are we giving it to him? Like, yeah, he came back from an injury and had the wrist injury, but that just seems so lame and boring. And I think that there's a chance that the voters might feel that way as well. And Darnold could be the guy because the story's so good and the team is so good and they continue to win. So my advice right now as bettors, it comes down to risk assessment. I have 0 bets currently on Sam Darnold. I'm continuing to ride this thing out. I want to see what happens. Let's say he plays well against the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday. Like, what's the conversation then? Is everybody going to come out in droves and say that Sam Darnold's the guy? They're 13-2, or does somebody else emerge? Is there another story that could potentially happen? I mean, Kyler Murray's still out there hanging out at big prices. The Cardinals can still technically win the NFC West. There's still time for somebody to emerge, but Darnold feels like he is the main guy that everyone wants to go ahead and get behind. And Nick mentioned Mike Florio, our teammate here at NBC and Peacock. In October, Florio wrote in a column, quote, "If I ultimately decide that Darnold best fits my interpretation of the criteria, which I believe as written renders him eligible, I will vote for him. And if the AP has a problem with that, they can take my vote." Like, that is Mike Florio, one of the 50 voters for the AP award. So that's one person's opinion. He doesn't have to be the voice of everybody, but he's the only voice. And right now, some of the voices that are talking, they're saying Sam Darnold.
So I know you said like you're going to ride this out here. I'm just going to give like my opinion here. It feels like it may be worth it having a little exposure to Darnold. Would you advise against that? You're better with this stuff than me. That's just my opinion. And I want to offer just a little bit more context. So I've talked about it on the show for a long. Like, I used to work in the NFL. Like, I worked for NFL radio for a decade. I know a lot of the voters, like personally, not all of them, but like a good amount of them. So I've reached out to some of them. I've gotten, and I will not name names, it's all off-record conversations. I've had some tell me, like they're not voting for Darnold, and Darnold is not eligible, like under the current criteria. I've had others tell me that they are considering voting for Darnold, and they think others will as well. I will give my opinion on this. My opinion, and I can be wrong, so I hesitate to even give it, but I will because I have the microphone. My opinion is that the Darnold voters are right now a vocal minority. But that can be easily wrong because what Femi said, there's a chance no one's thinking about this, and once the vocal minority starts getting louder, then the majority will be swayed. Like, that could definitely happen. I just wanted to offer that because I have had conversations with voters off the record.
Yeah, and let me offer this up. Like, this is like I'll say the name because he's not a voter. Like, Rich Eisen has a radio show. Everybody knows that. Like, but he talked about the Minnesota Vikings. I had a friend of mine that sent this to me a couple days ago, and he said, like, talking about Kevin O'Connell at first, like, oh, he deserves to be coach of the year, and then he gets to, and I know they're not giving out. They refuse to have comeback player of the year given to somebody coming back from the bench or lack of opportunities. Otherwise, Sam Darnold would have that thing wrapped up. That's one person's opinion. Rich Eisen is an NFL employee. He does not vote. He's not allowed to have a vote. But like, you could see voters sort of thinking like him. Like, when I talk about voter adjacent, like someone like Rich Eisen is who I mean. Like someone like that kind of thinks like most media members. And I think that's the tricky part. Some people, like Nick just told you, he knows more voters than I do. Like they told him that they're willing to go ahead and vote for Sam Darnold. Other people, well, I don't think he's eligible, so I don't think I'm going to vote for him. So as bettors, we're sort of left kind of in the dark, which can be a very fun place. And like, there could be very good opportunities from a betting standpoint, but can equally be annoying to being like, okay, what the hell do I do with this thing when I don't know if the best story might not be voted on because the AP, the organization that is overseeing the voting, is telling the voters to not vote for him and to look elsewhere. So, I mean, right now, you could go ahead and get a little bit of Darnold. I'm not going to do it. I wouldn't hate anybody for doing it, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and ride that out. But that's just me based on my own risk assessment. I think it comes down to personal risk assessment and what else you have in the market as well.
Now, with that being said, right, I referenced October 11th. Like, I did this rant, like, don't bet Sam Darnold to win comeback player of the year. He can't win under the criteria. I don't regret saying it because, again, the Associated Press put a criteria out that Darnold, and then he got pulled off the board at all these sports books after that. So I don't regret saying it, but I do have to acknowledge that I could be wrong about that now, right? Like, that's a fair acknowledgement and a fair thing to say, is that could be, we could look at that, what I said on October 11th, that's like a freezing cold take potentially, right? We have to acknowledge that, right?
100%. Like the people who bet Darnold, if he ends up winning, they could dunk on you. like that could be what happens, you know? And,
and that's fair in love and war, saying, I guess. Yeah. And betting. And that's why I'm saying this right now. And it's less to cover my own ass. It's more because it's the right thing to do. And we're trying to provide the best information to you, the listener and viewer. I was really confident in that. a couple months ago, and I think I had a really, really like ironclad, airtight reason at the time. And now this whole thing is so nebulous because the guy from the AP, I can't just come out and say definitively one way or another, and the door has been left ajar here. So I have to acknowledge now that while I meant it at the time and I thought I was 100% right, it looks like things may have changed that I may not be 100% right anymore. In fact, I know I'm not 100% right. So like, I'm not saying Darnold's going to win, but I have to acknowledge there's a chance that he will, whereas 2 months ago I thought there was zero chance. So, I don't know if you want to post that or not, guys, so we can do whatever we want, but I just felt like it was important to say that. All right.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll add real quickly before we move on to the Bontemps straw poll is that the point that everybody's latching on to is the other circumstances part. And Darnold would fit under the other circumstances umbrella right now because he's coming back from the bench, but it clarifies that you could be medical hardship or physical injury or other circumstance.
Yeah, all right. The whole thing's like, honestly, like it pisses me off. Like it's so stupid. Like this could be fixed with like one tweet from these people. Can the what's the Associated Press doing?